Committee, members of the Executive Management Team, Deputy City Clerk, and the City Clerk in the Council Chambers. Members of the Senior Management Team and other staff are available to answer questions in person and via video conference. The Council Chambers remain closed to the public until further notice. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. For the consent items, I will read out the title associated with the recommended motions printed on the agenda. Members of the General Committee may ask the clerk and the City Clerk in the Council Chambers. Members of the item is not held, the motion staff are available to answer questions. No further discussion of the item will take place at General Committee and will go forward to the April 11th City Council meeting for approval. The first and only staff report is the 2022 Busking Program Pilot and Emerging Artist Musicians Program. Does anybody want that held? Seeing none, it's approved on consent. We have no reports of officers of the corporation. We have several items for discussion. First is establishing a renters committee.
Please.
Held by Councillor Harvey. Next is gate at Tyndale Park. Seeing nobody holding, it was approved. Lake Simcoe. Maybe I'll read that last one since it went through on consent. That staff in the Development Services Department investigate the cost of installing and operating an automated gate at Tyndale Park to limit vehicular access into the park in the later evening hours and report back to General Committee. And that's put on by Councillor Jim Harris. Next one's Lake Simcoe. Does anybody want that held? Okay, then it's approved, but I will read that one as well. It's fairly lengthy. Whereas Lake Simcoe is one of Ontario's largest watersheds, home to First Nations since time immemorial, and situated in the growing communities of Simcoe County, York Region, Durham Region, and the cities of Barrie and Orillia. And whereas the watershed faces threats due to eutrophication, largely from phosphorus runoff and other contaminants in the lake and its tributaries, and whereas the lake is a significant source of drinking water as well as being an integral for local recreation, tourism, agriculture, and other key economic drivers, and whereas the federal government's funded a Lake Simcoe cleanup fund of $65 million over 10 years between 2007 and 2017, but that fund has not been renewed, and whereas during the 2019 federal election, the Honourable Christia committed $40 million over 5 years towards Lake Simcoe, and whereas during the 2021 federal election, the Liberal Party of Canada committed to implement a strategic freshwater action plan, including an historic investment of $1 billion over 10 years. This plan will provide an essential funding to protect and restore larger lakes and river systems, starting with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence River System, Lake Simcoe. And whereas the Conservative Party of Canada also committed to refunding the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund in the 2019 and 21 general elections with an investment of over $30 million over 5 years, and whereas further to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change mandate letter, which directs the Minister to establish a Canada Water Agency and implement a strengthened freshwater action plan, including a historic investment to provide funding to protect and restore large lakes and river systems, starting with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence River System, Lake Simcoe. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Corporation of the City of Barrie supports federal funding for a Lake Simcoe restoration fund that represents a significant percentage of the overall Freshwater Action Plan Fund, with funding in excess of previous commitments beginning in the 2022 budget, and asks that such funding be used to undertake shoreline mitigation, stream restoration, and stormwater quality management, including in the tributaries of Sophia Creek, Kids Creek, Bunkers Creek, Diamonds Creek, Hodges Creek, Whiskey Creek, Lovers Creek, and Hewitt's Creek, and projects to ameliorate contaminated sites in the watersheds and upgrades to help retrofit municipal infrastructure such as wastewater treatment and stormwater management facilities to decrease total current discharges from existing facilities, and the planting of 250,000 trees in the watershed, and purchasing and conservation of more forests and wetlands under the auspices of the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority to make significant progress towards the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan goal of 40% of the watershed area being protected natural land. 3, that a copy of this resolution, along with the letter from the Mayor, be sent to the Federal Minister of Finance, the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, the President of the Treasury Board, and members of Parliament for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte, Barrie Innisfil, Simcoe North, Simcoe, Newmarket, Aurora, Haliburton, Kawartha, Lakes, Brock, and Durham, and to all Lake Simcoe regional municipalities and the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, Regional Conservation Authority, put on by Councillor Sergio Morales. Okay. And so there was nobody who wanted to hold it. Please do not say you want to hold it now. The next item is Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. Anybody want that held? Passes on consent. I'll read that one out. It's that the City of Barrie endorse the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act that would create a process for municipal councils to remove councillors who violate workplace violence and harassment policies. 2, that a letter be sent to local MPPs and MPP Stephen Blais, the Premier and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. That was put on by Councillor Keenan Elwin. And our final item for discussion is the potential of purchase of Barrie Jail. Anybody want that held?
Hold, please.
Hold, please.
Okay, Councillor Kungl first. It's held. Okay, we have several items held, beginning with the establishment of a renters committee, and that was held by Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. I'll put it on the floor as printed. I don't necessarily have any issues with it. However, I do have some concerns with it. I've had a few residents reach out to me over the last couple of days about some concern about where do we draw the line when it comes to a committee of this sort, because if we're going to create a renters committee, do we then create a homeowners committee? Do we then create a landlords committee? And the other piece that I personally had a little bit of issue with is the fact that it speaks about including but not limited to rental rates and regulations associated with the units. Rental rates are a provincial matter, not a municipal matter. So I don't think it's appropriate that if this committee does exist, I just don't see how they can make any recommendations to council about something related to rental rates when that is solely done through the provincial government and one of their ministries.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor Ward. So, yeah, I definitely point taking Councillor Harvey. I think the purpose of this for sure is to start the discussion with respect to having the Renters Committee and us being the one connection from renters in our wards to the province. So we are the voice in between, speaking to MPPs Kanjan and Downey. And, you know, with the change in housing prices and the way that the market is looking at this time, and it's just an upward, and I get it, purchase prices as well, not just rental prices are a major concern. And Councillor Morales and I were just discussing that we feel the renters seem to lack a voice with respect to being more present here at the City Council. So again, we're open to elaborating it, changing it over the week, and kind of adjusting if you want to do anything else with it. But we just felt like this was something that was a missing piece for sure. I don't know if Councillor Morales wants to add anything.
Okay, the next one on the list is Councillor Reitman, but did Councillor Morales want to add something? Or just
Sure. If you allow me to go first, I appreciate that. Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward, through you to everybody. I think, yeah, so we were inspired, by the way, and I know I've said it before, but we were inspired by Councillor Jim Harris for moving the youth committee or youth council. That's kind of what got the gears turning. And this just went from a casual conversation with Councillor Natalie Harris to the motion you see before here today. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Most people know, but just for the purposes of this motion, equality is everybody gets the same thing or equal. Equity means those that don't have representation or a fair share get kind of brought up. I don't think there's lack of representation from homeowners. I think there's many active ratepayers association, neighborhood associations in the city and have for a while. And those voices, if people are homeowners and have concerns, I think, historically, if you look at the meetings, if you look at the ratepayers association, they're well represented. To my understanding, I don't know of any non-city renters association or advocacy group. So as Councillor Natalie Harris said, it's not just home prices, it's rental prices. We've consistently have been in the top 5 for highest rents in the country for some units, either 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms. Our home prices have seen an increase of 60-70% in the last 18 months. Barrie itself. And I think getting the perspective from people who rent, like that's the reality, not people who study this, but people who feel it. That's the intent of this renters committee. Specifically, the point to limiting rental rates, absolutely. That's provincial policy about creating rent freezes and floors. But it's just even hearing the anecdotes that if members of committee saw Barrie today a couple weeks ago, there are stories now in Barrie, this is not Toronto, where people are getting outbid for rental units because the competition is saying, I'll pay you 6 to 12 months in advance. So we want to understand their stories, get their perspectives, so we can better shape our policy in whatever capacity we can. So it's not meant to overstep or pretend to be the province, but just be able to get that perspective. And then I purposely put the word a little bit loose, so the committee itself and any councillors who want to help, maybe the clerk's office with this, can assist in helping with their mandate.
Councillor Riepma?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. The one thing that concerns me about this one is that it's a recommendation to next council, and I think it seems to me that we ought to leave it to next council. If the next council decides that they should have a renters committee, then we should let them make that decision rather than us make that recommendation to them. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Harvey. Landlord and tenant things are all provincially regulated. I'm not sure what changes a committee like this could make to city policy, because our policy really doesn't have anything to do with landlords versus tenants. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that tenants don't have lots of issues. For sure they do. But I'm not sure that around this table we are able to address them in any meaningful way. And so I'm much more inclined to not support this at all. Thanks.
Councillor Harris, Natalie Harris?
Thank you, Mayor Ward. Just in response to Councillor Riepma, I find that with such a large amount of voices that are so important right now in the rental market in the city of Barrie, we can't push this aside, and we should start talking about it right now, and also really remember what our job is to do to advocate within our provincial representatives and bring those voices as well. And I know that our provincial representatives, of course, have a phone number as well, and our ward residents can call directly. But it's important for us to learn from what their lived experience is as well, and to really, and that is what this is all about. So I'm also a renter in the city, and I've gone through the ups and downs of it. So I really can see the perspective of what's missing with respect to the conversations around the table, and that's a gap. That's a missing piece to what we talk about here. And that's what we do as city council, is we bring those things to our MPPs all the time. We bring concerns, we have ideas, we brainstorm, and we advocate on behalf of our entire city, which includes many, many renters. So this, I think, is really important right now.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Harvey? Oh.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. I'm not going to support it in the current form that this motion is, but in doing some research, I can see that Vancouver has a similar committee, however, with a different mandate that is a little more directive and not conflictive with provincial policy. The wording that they've used for their mandate is the mandate of the Renters Advisory Committee is to advise council on strategic city priorities relating to renters, to monitor and respond to impacts of provincial and federal legislation affecting tenants, and to advise council on enhancing access and inclusion for renters in developing city policy and civic life. Something like that, I think, would be a lot more aligned, opposed to the current motion. So just food for thought for the movers of the motion, but in the current form, I just can't support it because it does conflict with provincial policy.
Councillor Jim Harris, then Councillor Natalie Harris.
Great, thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. Just a couple questions. I understand the importance of the experience of renters, and certainly, I think, if I'm making an assumption, but Councillor Harris was referring to individuals who would be were marginalized and struggling at the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder, and no, because if so, I was thinking, if not, there are a number of opportunities for tenant associations, and I'm wondering, have you looked at possible other municipalities, tenant committees of council, and maybe through you, Mayor Lehman, pardon me,
Oh.
Mayor Ward to Councilor Harris. Sorry.
I'm going to say Mayor Lehman 100 times too, don't worry.
Councillor
Through you, I've done a lot of research into the tenant committees that they have themselves, and I definitely, like Councilor Morales said, this is kind of open for discussion. This is the point, to kind of get it on the floor, and we wanted to hear feedback from everybody around the table to elaborate on it. I don't know of any specific municipalities other than what Councilor Harvey just said. I like the wording that you had, Councilor Harvey, and I know that Councilor Morales and I are open to elaborating, changing, adjusting. The purpose of this is to have the voice, though, of the renters, and it isn't just marginalized. This is the entirety of it. I don't think, I'm not marginalized, and I'm a renter, and I've learned a lot, and I have a lot to share, and that kind of thing comes from that lived experience that we can use, a really valuable lived experience here. So if you're not willing to support it tonight, we can talk about it this week. Like I said, we're not firm on the wording and really open to making this work for sure.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I was, in seeing it, did some research, and it was referenced that there's homeowners associations, well, there's also tenant associations, that organizing guide on Tenant Association of Ontario, so you can actually, gather and create an association locally. So I just had noticed that, and the Advocacy Center for Tenants of Ontario exists. So there's a lot of entities that provide tenant voice and collective tenant voice. So I was just noting that there was options available, similar to what would be available to a homeowner or a landlord association, as opposed to having it as a committee of council, which I understand. And if I understand correctly, what Councilor Harvey was suggesting is there's not one for landlords or homeowners and tenants. That would be equivalent. But anyway, thank you for.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Ward, to staff. With the introduction of the Youth Council, and then if this committee to council was to be established, would we have the staffing resources, or?
Okay, I'm not sure if that was for City Clerk. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Ward, to Councillor Thompson. We would definitely have to look at our resources because they are getting stretched right now for the amount of committees we do have. And going into the next term, we do not know what the new council may want to introduce as committees. So there may be more committees added. So definitely adding suggestions for more committees now will probably be needing to add resources to not only my department, but other departments do support the committees as well as resources. So they may have to look at additional resources in other areas as well.
Perfect. A follow-up?
Yep.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Councillor Reitman. This is something, for next council, and I think once they sit down and do their strategic planning and committees that'll come out of that, I think, if this is something that council felt was something that could assist them in achieving their strategic priorities, then they would move it forward at that time. So right now, I won't support it in the way it's written. And I just don't think that it's really the time right now.
Okay. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you. Through you, I should have asked what the appropriate process is. Deputy, Acting Mayor Ward. a comment at this time in reference to the motion as it's presented, in alignment with some other comments, is I won't be supporting it as tabled. I am curious to see how next term we'll look at housing overall, not just renters, but I would say, with our affordable housing task group and pieces that will come back in the fall, should that land to a strategic planning conversation, our Seniors Advisory Council, for the better part of the last 2 years I've been with them, a heavy majority of the conversation has been on housing, be it low-income housing or seniors program to subsidize aspects to make housing retention and access more affordable. So I would look to the next term and would welcome this conversation to be a bit broader. The only thing that I saw as it relates to anything to date, if there's urgency, would be how do we use city building? Is that an appropriate reference committee to bring ahead some of these conversations in the interim? But other than that, I've only ever seen really a topic come to a municipal level by which we've got a lot of changes outside of an advocacy voice is short-term rentals. And that's where changes can touch things from licensing and regulation to the municipal accommodation tax and then to zoning. So outside of that, I do feel it does lean provincial, and we could use some of the current forums that we have now to address anything urgent from a topic of conversation and maybe shape this or feedback for the next council.
Thank you. Councillor Alwyn, do you have something?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. Yes, I'm supportive of this motion. As a renter myself, I definitely see the need, as Councillor Morales was alluding to, of trying to address that power imbalance that we see between renters and landlords. And right now, what we're seeing at the landlord and tenant board provincially, we're seeing them process evictions like it's going out of style, and it's really alarming. And that's going to have an impact on our municipal services and our municipal budgets, whether that's through the money that we fund to the County of Simcoe for housing programs or for shelter programs. It's going to have an impact on municipal services and policy. So I think now is exactly the time to start thinking about how we can help renters and tenants organize collectively and have a collective voice on these matters when going to the provincial government and advocating. I understand the sort of the hesitation of having this as a formal committee of an advisory committee of council, but I think it's a creative and innovative way of doing it and would provide some resources to help get the ball rolling on that tenant organizing. The Simcoe County Alliance and Homelessness Barrie chapter has made tenant organizing one of its priorities for the upcoming year. And I'd like to invite Councillor Natalie Harris and Councillor Morales to maybe join us, and then we can discuss how we could work together if this motion does pass, or if it doesn't, how we can organize tenants effectively and get the ball rolling. So I'm very supportive. I think renters need a stronger voice in this community with the rate of evictions happening and the skyrocketing rents. They need a stronger voice.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. So I just want to clarify, I'm hearing the comments of my colleagues, so I just want to clarify at least one of the concerns that has been brought up. So I'll point everybody to the motion 8.1 on our agendas. It reads as follows: that staff in the Legislative and Court Services Department include for the 2022-2026 Council's consideration of an establishment of Renters Committee. And then after the language in the middle, it says to be considered by as part of its council committee appointments. So the reason I wanted to go over that is anybody who maybe was going to vote no because it should be the future council, the wording, and I worked or the clerk reached out to me specifically to make sure the wording was right. So I thank her for that. This is for the future consideration. One could argue that the future council is going to determine themselves what their priorities. That's great. But I think I'm hearing this, I'm seeing this, and the reality is here. I don't think it can be ignored. It's not just the people who are paying too much, it's the people who are underhoused in rentals, it's not just people who are being evicted, it's also in terms of many, many, many other factors. So I think it goes a long way that when the new council sits around the table and gets the motion that says that they should consider doing this, they can decide at that point. What I will do to qualm the other concerns that I've been hearing is, if I can, through you, Acting Mayor Ward, and if Councillor Harris, Natalie Harris will second me, I will just amend the motion. So I can send this, but I was just typing on my iPad. Essentially, that staff in the Legislative and Court Service Department include, for the 2022-2026 Council's consideration, the establishment of a Renters Committee, and that the 2022 to 2026 Barrie City Council decide on the committee's mandate in terms of reference, if they decide to consider it as a council committee appointment.
Okay, I don't think you need a seconder or
Okay,
even
perfect.
Councillor Harris's agreement, so it's
So,
the amendment's on the floor.
Yep, I can speak to it. So I'm hearing my colleagues. I'm getting rid of any concerns about terms of reference and mandate. I think that we can work that out. It wasn't my intent to do it on the floor at General Committee. I think this is more than just a sentiment. I'm not trying to virtue signal or play a platitude. This is such a firm reality. It's whether it's improperly housed seniors or young millennials. I'm hearing from people, millennials, people my age, consistently. They're just not finding suitable places to rent, whether it be if they have young families, whether they want to start one, whether they're still with their parents or roommates. This is just not something we can ignore. I think it doesn't overstep. If the wording originally said the next council, and now that I'm clearing the table of any language about possible concerns with overlapping with provincial, I think it'll be in the proper hands with the new council to determine that mandate. One more thing, in terms of overstaffing, I had talked to this clerk about this. My intent, but that's the beauty about committees. They evolve, they change. Some committees meet a lot, some committees end up just meeting for the sake of meeting. My intent was that they maybe meet quarterly. Sometimes they're not going to need to meet. I've sat on committees that meet for the sake of meeting, and I've sat on committees that need to create subcommittees because they have so much volume. So just to qualm any concerns, this is an evolution, and again, the new council can definitely have a more holistic view of that. So that is my words to my amendment, Acting Mayor Ward.
Okay, can I get you to read that one more time, please?
Basically the same as printed in our agenda. I'm removing everything after renters, comma. So when it says including but not limited to, I'm removing that word all the way to the units, comma, and I'm inserting the following. And that the 2022 to 2026 Barrie City Council decide on the committee's mandate in terms of reference if they decide to implement, adopt, create a committee.
Okay, you've heard the amendment. Any comments or questions? Councillor Harris? Natalie Harris?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor Ward. Obviously, you support this amendment. I think it's a good clarification for anybody who's concerned about what wording we're looking for. And it really, I think, signifies how much we are showing the importance of listening to that group of individuals in this city. And if the council in the coming term decide to change their mind, that's fine. But it just really is making a bit of a statement to say this is not an even playing field with respect to voices with renters and homeowners. I've been both, I get it, and this is I think a great way to really just show how important this is around the table.
Councillor Thompson?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Ward, to the mover of the amendment. Before doing this, did he reach out to SCADA or to the Affordable Housing Task Force and stuff to see? Like, I just think that, with the committees we've already had that, and with SCADA, always doing the advocacy work for renters and all kinds of housing and stuff. I've never heard this brought up through either of those. It wasn't a recommendation and stuff like that. I actually had a conversation yesterday with SCADA, and it was news to them, and they didn't know much about it, and they said they would wait and see what it would bring and stuff. But I just was wondering if you had reached out to any of those and their perspective on this, how it would help them.
Councillor Morales?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward, through you to Councillor Thompson. My perspective is that there's no need to. I want this, my intent, my vision is that this be a city led initiative, and if they're happy to come to the table to see how they can be a part of that voice, that's great. I think SCADA covers, Simcoe County Association 10 homelessness. I think they have a specific niche and mandate, and this might necessarily be a little bit different than that. So it's not the purpose of duplicating efforts, it's the purpose of enhancing efforts and bringing a little bit more equity to this issue that, again, is quite significant in the city. And again, they can be part of that table.
Any other comments or questions on the amendment? Okay, on the amendment, all in favor? It is all against. It is defeated. Now we're
Separate
gonna
report.
put the original, we're going to put the original motion on the table first, so.
Oh, that was the amendment, you're right.
Yes. The original
Perfect.
motion is now on the table. Any comments or questions? Councillor Morales?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. I'll do another amendment to just remove the wording between renters, comma, and rental units, comma. So this is technically a different amendment because I'm not adding replacement wording. And I think it's already explicit that it's for the 2022-2026 council.
Okay. I think that's basically the motion we just defeated. I don't think there's a difference between that and the one we just defeated.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so motion's on the table, the original motion. All in favor? Against? It is defeated.
Separate report.
Separate report's been requested. One last item is potential purchase of the Barrie Jail, and I'll read this one, that staff be directed to investigate the feasibility of purchasing the Barrie Jail for a nominal cost for the purpose of preservation and affordable housing with the Ministry of Community, Safety and Correctional Services and/or Infrastructure Ontario as the province's property manager. Report back to General Committee, sponsored by Councillor Mike McCann, and Councillor Kungle requested it be held.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. I'll table the motion as presented, 8.5. I'd like to comment to it. I won't be supporting the motion as it stands. A couple of pieces specific to items around this, not just the location, but the whole process. So my understanding is that the ministry does actively have this heritage site in operations for programming. But in addition to that, over the past month, I believe through March, I do sit on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee with Simcoe County. The conversations out of that committee over the past couple of months have actually been promoting the county take an advocacy stance to engage the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs to look at identifying surplus lands. In addition to that, to look at identifying surplus lands that could be made available, particularly to municipalities at a reduced cost than current market. So through, I believe, a motion that passed at the end of this month, there is a formal letter that is actually going through the warden on behalf of council, being sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And that does identify an advocacy piece to ask about the province consider first whether any of its land holdings may be suitable for housing development, and if so, that they may be made available first for the purpose of affordable housing at a threshold below market value. The context of that memo also does talk a bit about how that might be a little tricky in the beginning, as there will need to be a policy that does outline then factors related to how to implement the means by which the land is disposed of and to whom. Regardless of that, there has been quite a bit of work tied to knowing that I believe the Provincial Affordable Housing Task Group did not, in its recommendations or its work, look at the scope of surplus. But I believe that process is underway through the county that perhaps I'm not supporting it this evening, but in the fall when the county comes back and through the work that they're doing, perhaps they might have a commentary on this, but that there already is an existing process by which surplus government lands do get identified, either through a direct sale, and then if there's no interest through a direct sale, then to an open market sale. So I'm comfortable with that process, and I would leave it to hearing back through what the County of Simcoe receives. In addition to that, the general work of the Affordable Housing Task Group and recommendations, and the work of staff that's already focused on new foundations as one of several examples where we've done a bit of an environmental scan around potential lands. We've held an open public process, and that we actually are proceeding with looking at viability of locations that I believe we'll hear back with, if not on May 17th through Planning Committee, but then maybe a bit afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kungl, Councillor Rietma, and then Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. I circulated an amendment to everyone, and I was hoping that Councillor McCann would accept this as a friendly. Yes, go ahead. I'll let Councillor McCann.
Well, we haven't heard it yet, so maybe you can read out your proposed amendment.
Okay. I'll read it out. That staff be directed to discuss with the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services and Infrastructure Ontario for the purpose of the province preserving and opening the existing historic building and constructing affordable housing on any surplus land and reporting back to General Committee. And the difference between what Councillor McCann has suggested and what I'm suggesting is that I really don't want the city to own it. I think we need to speak to the province and say, can you do this for us? You should do this for us. And of course, the province can do this if they want to. They can give themselves even a ministerial zoning order, no problem there. And they could probably have a building under construction in 6 months. And I don't see why the city should spend taxpayers' money, even if it's $1 to buy it, to implement this. So I would like staff to go and have a good discussion with the ministry and see if we can motivate them to do this. Because it makes a lot more sense for the province to do it. They've got the money, they've got the land, and they can do it if they want to. And so that's the difference between my amendment and what Councillor McCann is proposing. I think, though, that I'm certainly aligned with Councillor McCann. I think that's a wonderful building. It's a historic building, and I would love to see a good use made of it, either the province using it for something associated with their court operations, or maybe some other use that would be suitable there. And I think that there is some excess land there, and I could certainly see using it for some form of housing.
Can I just back up to Councillor Kungl? Did you put the original motion on the floor? I can't remember if I asked you. You did. Okay. So I'd consider this an amendment. I don't think we have to worry about a friendly amendment. Look for the clerk for direction, but it's just an amended motion, correct? Yes.
Sure.
So we've heard the amended motion. Councillor Owen, you were on the next on the list. Did you want to speak to the amended motion? The amendment?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. The amendment I will support, but I'm still having reservations about the idea as a whole, and for several reasons. Just sort of taking a cursory look at this proposal, this is a very old building, a heritage facility. The complexity of renovating a building like this for housing, it's going to be very complex to make it barrier-free, to get up to AODA standards for accessibility. Very challenging, very expensive. Bringing it up to code in terms of the insulation. With a heritage building, you can't normally just slap insulation on the outside of the building, so that creates extra costs and challenges. All the mechanical equipment that's required, the systems to run cold and hot air, and air quality control in the building, very complex in a heritage building like that. So I have major concerns about the viability of housing in this building. And I also have major concerns about the message that it sends and the stigma that is attached to this. I think we need to be supporting dignified affordable and social housing for everyone. And I don't think that this proposal does that. And to be honest, it doesn't really seem like a serious proposal to me or very well thought out. So I do prefer the amendment moved by Councillor Rietma, but I'm still struggling with the idea overall as a whole. Absolutely, we need to keep advocating for that safe and dignified affordable housing, but it needs to be well thought out and not in a place that will stigmatize people who have barriers to accessing housing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Natalie Harris, then Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. My question, I guess, first to the mover of the amendment. Did you have a chance to speak with MPP Kanjan or MPP Downey about any conversations already that's happening about that site? I'm guessing no. I'll tell you what it is. Okay.
The answer is no.
Okay, perfect. And I'm wondering if Councillor McCann, if you had had a chance to speak with them yet, either. No.
I've discussed this with,
Okay. Yep.
thank you, Acting Mayor Ward, to Councillor Harris. I had a discussion with MPP Kanjan about this probably 15 months ago. Obviously, we're in COVID. This has been something that's been on my radar for 2 or 3 years. I had a discussion with MPP Downey. I would say summer of last year. Both seemed very positive. During COVID, nothing was formal. It was all just, conversations. I did reach out to them both last week and today, and obviously they're in a campaign right now, so they have a bigger focus than I think my own discussion. So to answer your question, yes, I have talked to both of them, but in recent times, no.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page with any discussions we did have. So I spoke to both of them yesterday, and MPP Kanjan had mentioned that in 2021 she did look into this, and the ministry officials confirmed the buildings being maintained and considered as a heritage property of the provincial significance, and the exterior's been converted into a secure parking lot, which is being used by the Ministry of the Attorney General to support the court operation. And at the time, the Ministry of Infrastructure said they're determining the future of the property, so she would follow up on that as well. So I think the discussions are already happening, and that might be good to know. And with respect to the affordable housing side of it, I'm concerned as well. I agree with Councillor Aylwin with the perception of this, and maybe it would be better that we focus our attention on housing and shelters that we might be losing coming very soon. So the Travel Lodge was the extension of the Travel Lodge being used by the Busby. It was coming to an end in April. They've extended it to June, and the county, being the person, the organization that runs everything to do with housing, they are actively looking into what to do. I know Councillor Kungal's on that committee. They're sending back a report soon. So that's kind of, we need to focus on, that's the issue at hand. Where will those individuals go in a couple months if the Travel Lodge isn't kept? Where will these 180 plus people be housed? This is the future that will be way down the line. I agree we need to keep it for heritage preservation. But there are a lot of other potential sites that we can look at for affordable housing right now that are already in discussion with the county. So at this time, I won't be supporting either the amendment or the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor McCann, did you still want to speak? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. I guess maybe I have a question for Councillor Harris, Natalie Harris, and for Councillor Aylwin. When you say that we don't want to stigmatize community members, I'm at a loss here. How is this stigmatizing community members?
I see Councillor Aylwin put his hand up first, so go
Councillor
ahead and
Aylwin.
go first.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward, and thank you, Councillor McCann, for the question. I'd encourage you to reach out to some of the service agencies who support people who are unhoused in our community and ask them that question. or even talk to people who are experiencing homelessness themselves and get a
Point
better
of order,
understanding.
Deputy Mayor Ward. I'm asked the question, direct question. I'm not looking to get referred to another agency. If he doesn't have the
Yeah.
answer, then please pass on to Councilor Natalie Harris.
Continue, Councillor Owen.
Thank you. Sorry, just got to get my train of thought again after being interrupted there. I'd encourage you to reach out to those organizations, but basically the problem is that many people who are experiencing homelessness have had interactions with the justice system in the past, and the way we deal with homelessness in this province in a lot of ways is through the criminalization of people experiencing homelessness and controlling their movement throughout the city. And so there's a lot of trauma wrapped up in the carceral system for many people who are unhoused in their community. So to sort of tie those two ideas together with this proposal just shows a lack of understanding for that. And that's why I was encouraging you to go and maybe educate yourself a bit on that piece. But I appreciate you asking the question and your curiosity on that. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor McCann, you still have the floor. Oh, Councillor Harris, sure.
Sure. Thank you for the question through you, Acting Mayor Ward. It's similar to Councillor Aylwin's response. Being very active in the community with people that battle with being unhoused and looking for not only housing, period, but affordable housing or anything along those lines, unfortunately have been criminalized in many different ways. There are a lot of great efforts that are happening in other cities around the country, even cities such as decriminalization of drugs for personal use, which would hopefully in the future make this not so stigmatizing. But right now, at this time, it is very stigmatizing. That isn't a home feel for them, that they have been present in the past in these institutions. And it has an institutionalized feeling as well, which is also linked to a lot of stigma. So while again, I am so open to having conversations about potential locations for affordable housing, etc. This, to be honest, is my last choice to choose right now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McCann. You still have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. I asked the question, how does this stigmatize people that would be interested in affordable housing? And two of my councillor colleagues only isolated the homeless. Well, we have a real issue here where people are teachers, firefighters, professionals, clerks, people that are trying to get into affordable housing. So unless I heard you incorrectly, which your hand's up now, if I can finish please and say my piece, is that we need to solve this problem with all three levels of government. And here's a location that if we were to direct staff to negotiate with the province and get it for a nominal cost, then that would reduce the square footage cost if we were to build affordable housing. Therefore, right now, affordable housing, I believe, is around $200 a square foot. Right now, you're looking at $300, $400, $500 a square foot that is being built in homes. So I feel that if we had a partnership with the province, if we were to give some financial relief in cost, then we'd be able to reduce the square footage cost to allow professionals, retirees to be into this, to be able to live in this affordable housing unit. I have talked to architects. I have talked to engineers. It is possible. I have no intention, I know the media portrayed that I did, that I wanted to put the affordable housing inside the jail. No, it says clearly that I want to have a dedicated, investigate the feasibility of purchasing the Barrie jail for a nominal cost for the purpose of preservation, affordable housing, and repurposing. So therefore, I'm looking at opportunities like a, a museum. There's lots of places around the world that are converting their jails to museums and creating a big wealth of tourism. Looking at a restaurant, I believe that that a resident had to a boutique hotel, and that's a great idea as well. You could maybe do a hybrid of affordable housing and boutique hotel. There's lots of these systems, these models that are throughout Toronto. So it's not like it's an original idea. These are happening. One of my friends just gave me a text message with, there's lots of prisons that are converted into condos. So therefore, I guess I'm just trying to have this council not try to solve the problem tonight. All this item discussion is asking is that we ask the province if they would like to get into a partnership, period. And then we can discuss as a community, as a council, with staff support, what ideas and what opportunities that we can have. And absolutely, we are going to, commemorate the historical significance of the Barrie Jail. So I guess I'm still sitting with, so that's the end of my discussion on my item. Now, getting back to Claire, Councillor Ritma's item amendment. I actually don't know if I like it or don't like it, because the end result is I want the end result. And the city of Barrie owning the Barrie Jail, or the province owning the Barrie Jail, but the province actually doing all the restoration and the preservation and maybe building up. I think that we're two roads getting to the exact same spot at maybe little to no cost to the city. So I really would love to hear from the other councillors around the room about that spot, because I'm kind of twixt in between whether I like my idea better, I like your idea better, but the end result, I think, is going to be great for the city of Barrie. It's right downtown, and Barrie's changing, and this is going to be a really cool area that could bring a lot of Barrie people and residents. So, thank you, Acting Mayor Ward.
Okay. First of all, because maybe the people haven't spoken yet. Councillor Morales, did you have your hand up? Oh, did you want to respond to something? Okay, Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor Ward. In response, just to clarify, I did not say it was just for unhoused people. I said specifically it was for unhoused people, people that require affordable housing, and I think it's important to also highlight that that's a ever-changing spectrum. You're sometimes unhoused, sometimes you're looking for affordable housing. When you are in that unfortunate area of life for whatever reason, it isn't just a linear if you're this or that, unfortunately. And I'm not sure why you're getting so defensive about our view on why this is stigmatizing. And the way I read it was that we were investigating infrastructure as a purpose, yes, for preservation, I understand that, and it's happening already according to our MPPs, but we're talking about for purposes of preservation and affordable housing. So, and I am not talking about hotels, like that's not what is in front of us here right now. This is about a jail that unfortunately criminalized individuals that at one point in their life had been battling with whatever the issue may be, and we are seeing massive changes around the world to change those laws, because that has been what has happened statistically to individuals and has kept them in that bracket of society, whether it's unhoused or looking for affordable housing, for too long. And I can tell you, even if it's such a sensitive matter to the point where people don't necessarily even use shelters that are offered. There are so many things that are stigmatizing. We need affordable housing that is home. And this, unfortunately, if we are converting the actual jail, and that's what the way I did interpret this, into being affordable housing, that does not feel like home. And the individuals I've spoken to prefer to live elsewhere. Anywhere elsewhere. So again, I'm just answering your question. I don't know why you're getting so defensive about it, but that is the view of a lot of those marginalized people as to why this doesn't work and why the stigma is there. And I'm always open to having the discussion about other options with you, Councillor McCann, and you know that.
Councillor Morales, you're next.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. To the amendment, I'll be voting against the amendment. I was just writing some notes here. This amendment, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily voting against the motion, but this amendment does nothing but pass the buck to someone else. It's not like the province is just going to renovate it. because we asked them nicely. Many people, Councillor McCann said you've had discussions. I remember having discussions with Councillor Kanjan. This is a very complicated issue. Why I'm voting against the amendment, why I'm speaking to it, is it really does nothing but just kind of create like a sense of accomplishment without actually moving the needle on this. I appreciate the enthusiasm about asking others stakeholders to build needed housing, but this specific amendment is not going to achieve that. That said, Councillor Rima, if you ever bring a motion to ask Georgian College to build purpose-built student housing on their lands to address the issue of housing, specifically rental, not just affecting Ward 1, but the entire city in general. So basically, same amendment, just different stakeholder. I'd be happy to support you on that one.
Any other comments on the amendment? Councillor Jim Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. Yeah, in looking at this amendment and the original item, my mind went to the recently approved Housing Affordability Task Force final report to council. And I think what we're doing here in debating this is we're kind of ahead of ourselves. We have made a significant investment in affordable housing in I think at least 22 recommendations over 11 different areas. And it feels like this work, this type of work and sites of this nature are part of what we've approved to do already. And in fact, we've invested in dedicated resource, recommendation A, in section 2, I believe, to have a staff who will do these types of things exactly. So I just think that good news. I was happy to see affordable housing on our agenda. It's part of our strategic priorities. But we have a report that's been significantly reviewed and invested in, and that we have a plan. So I would encourage us to allow the plan to take shape. I think Councillor Congo did a very good job of describing what was coming forward as soon as May. So I think we have these efforts in place. So rather than coming each week and putting a new location on the map, when there's maps in the back of the report that show you a number of locations, redevelopment potential, there's at least 2 maps. So I think let's be patient, let's let the process proceed, and the resources that we've committed to this provide us the results, and then see what we have. So I would encourage, I'm not for either, so I will conclude there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. There's no other comments? Oh, Councillor Rietma.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. My amendment basically is of 2 pieces. One of them, the first one is that we talk to the province about preserving the existing and reopening the existing structure, the historic building. And my amendment does not suggest that we buy it, even for $1, because I think Councillor Aylwin is absolutely correct. It's going to cost a fortune to restore it, to whether it's used for a hotel or a restaurant or whatever it's used for. And then the second part of my motion is that any surplus land be used for building affordable housing. And I think the province can usefully do that if there is affordable or if there is surplus land. Then let's have the province do that. The province has been pushing municipalities on affordability, doing more, and I agree with Councillor Congo that there are things in motion, and there are maybe things on the site, but I would prefer that our staff go have a discussion with the province so that we can increase the urgency in what they're thinking about and what they are doing. And I think that I'm very sensitive to the question of stigma that Councillor Harris raises, and I think that's absolutely a big problem. And I'm hopeful that if it's clear that this is going to be 2 separate buildings altogether, one is the historic building and the other one is for affordable housing. I'm hoping that that goes some ways to settle that. And so I think that's where I want to leave it. I think the difference between myself and the original motion by Councillor McCann is that the difference is that I don't think the city wants to buy it. I don't think we want to own it, simply because we can't afford to do the rehabilitation work that's required on the historic building, and the province can put up a building for affordable housing much faster than we can. They have deep pockets. We don't. Thanks.
If there's no other comments or questions, I will call the vote on the amendment. And just to refresh your memory, it is that staff be with the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services and Infrastructure Ontario for the purpose of the province preserving and opening the existing historic building and constructing affordable housing on any surplus land and reporting back to General Committee. All in favor? Those against? We're on the original motion as put on by Councillor McCann, or on for discussion from Councillor McCann. Councillor McCann?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. I'm a little surprised at the comments around the table, to be quite frank, and maybe I'll just give a little insight. You know, I'm an entrepreneur, and I think an entrepreneur just sees opportunity. This is a completely unique property that will attract so much creative investors and people want to be a part of this project. Quite frankly, I've probably had over a dozen conversations over the past 7.5 years that wouldn't this be great if we did this? Wouldn't it be great if we did this? And we're just sitting on our heels doing nothing. I don't think I have to tell everybody that we are in a housing affordability crisis. So sitting back and being patient, with all due respect, is the exact opposite what we should do. We need to get on the balls of our feet and start acting. And I think that we've all heard our Premier, Doug Ford, basically tell all municipalities, get this happening. We want this to happen. So if you, and maybe it's just the entrepreneur inside of me that I see the opportunity so clear that we have an opportunity that we can attach what our Premier right now is asking the municipality to do, looking what the demand is, looking at the supply. We've got low supply, huge demand. We've got the money, as Councillor Kluber said, that has all the money, would want to partner up because they're not interested in getting their hands dirty. They want the municipalities to get their hands dirty and make this happen. So if we presented, if council directed staff to present a thorough pitch to the province that we want to preserve, restore, and refocus the Barrie Jail into something that's going to bring tourism to our town. And by the way, the land that we have around the Barrie Jail, we can convert into housing affordability for our professionals, for our retired culture, and maybe I should add this, that city staff should be open to other creative ideas like the boutique hotel. That would really significantly change the culture in our downtown. Okay, so there's my pitch to you. Now, what are we voting on tonight? Are we voting for anything I talked about? We're voting on staff to go and have a conversation. So if this council wants to say no, because I'm trying to promote affordable housing and housing affordability just to have the conversation, then I would be shocked at that. We're just voting to have the negotiations, a talk. Thank you.
Councillor Natalie Harris?
Thank you. I keep saying Mayor Lehman. I'm so sorry. Acting Mayor Ward. I'm going to try to say this. Councillor McCann, raising your voice about it isn't going to change the fact that we're talking about the jail for affordable housing, even if it's on the property still. The amount of stigma around this that isn't being recognized is shocking, to be honest, that it's even in front of us. And to kind of infer that we haven't been already discussing about other areas for affordable housing throughout our term is just not true. And that this is maybe the only thing that's come in front of us, and why aren't we saying yes to this is a little bit ridiculous. So again, you can talk to the county about the travel lodge. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's going to happen to the 180 plus people that will have nowhere to go if they aren't able to figure out transitional areas for these people to move to in June. That's what we're looking at right now, not converting an area, a jail, or building a brand new it's just not even, it's not even close to being feasible right now. And the conversation is already happening with the province around the historic portion of it. So it's not about raising your voice to make us see your side of it. To be honest, I'm getting a little bit frustrated by that. We have very valid reasons why we are voting no against this, and it's not really fair that you're throwing it at us that we're not considering affordable housing in our city. It's a little insulting, actually. So, thank you.
Okay, I don't want to turn this into a back and forth, but Councillor McCann, one last comment.
Yeah, Councillor Harris, you said you're insulted by my comments, and you say we can't afford it. What cost is this negotiation going to be to the city of Barrie?
I'm not going back and forth. I have nothing to say.
Okay, if anybody else have any other comments? If not, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? All those against? It's defeated. That is it for our items. We are now at inquiries. Are there any inquiries from any members of General Committee? Councillor Rietman and then Councillor McCann.
I have two different inquiries from two different staff members. The first one to Ms. Schlichter, I think. We have done the grants to the various art organizations, and you've given us a memo on that, and I appreciate that a great deal. I wonder if you could just outline sort of the criteria, how each group is assigned the amount that they get. And the second question I have for you is, do you do a debrief with the groups after they get their amounts?
Ms. Schlichter?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward, through to Councillor Rietma. The funding amounts are fully determined by the adjudicators, and the adjudication process is an independent process. We do a call out through the arts communities. Adjudicators apply, selected upon diversity, experience, things of that nature. That group then goes through a scoring criteria. Criteria was implemented as part of the grant program review process that we went through this year, and it was outlined in the staff report that we delivered in late 2021. I don't have the date offhand, but really it was designed to reflect the the recommendations coming out of that grant program review. So in terms of how the adjudicators look at that, so they score them, and then they look at historical funding, so how has the funding been used historically for returning applicants, and then they look at it within context of the current year's funding budget and come up with their allocation from that lens. And then you had a second part, which I'm getting to now, which is the debrief process. So as we've indicated throughout this whole grant review process, they think this is intended to be iterative, and certainly as we go through implementing it. Historically, we've always provided for debrief, and I know I've sat in on a couple with the portfolio, certainly open to a debrief going forward from the staff perspective and providing that lens. And again, we'll look overall to get some feedback on the overall revised process, and are there some tweaks, things we need to look at as we go forward with the program.
Okay,
Thank you.
You had another inquiry? Follow-up?
Yes, one other one to Madam Clerk. I heard somewhere that there's a municipal election going to happen this year. And I know that there are some municipalities that have sort of voter education programs, or programs that for people that are thinking about running or are interested in supporting that, that they have some programs that they're putting together. Are we thinking about doing anything like that?
Cook.
Through Deputy Mayor Ward to Councillor Rietma, thank you for the question. Yes, we are planning a few candidate sessions. We're looking at a date towards the end of April and probably one towards the end of June. We're just finalizing some information because we're trying to get our ministry partners to join us at these sessions.
Okay, Councillor Elwin.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. A couple inquiries to staff, and I'll direct them to CAO Pros unless there's someone else better suited to answering these questions. So it's concerning motion 20-G-257, confidential personal information and solicitor client privilege matter workplace investigation. And this is the public motion that we passed in public session after the workplace investigation. And it reads that the following corrective actions be undertaken in response to the workplace investigation identified in staff report HR S002-20. And the first point is that the respondent undertake training relative to workplace violence and harassment to be funded by the city, and that training be approved by the city's chief administrative officer and or the director of human resources. Has the respondent completed this training?
CAO Pros.
Through you, Acting Mayor Ward, to Councillor Alwyn. I can advise that the courses were selected in conjunction with HR and were provided to the respondent. The respondent indicated at the time their preference was to take the courses in person, and given the nature of the COVID pandemic at the time, did not allow for that. I believe recently the clerk has followed up to find out the status of the courses, and the intention is still to take the courses. However, they are intending to take them in person as previously stated.
Councillor Elwin.
Okay, thank you for that response. And a follow-up. So on March 29th, 2021, in a memo to council from staff, we were advised that the respondent had scheduled the training that was required by paragraph A of that motion that I just read out. So was that not the case at the time? Was it rescheduled? I'm just a little confused. We seem to have some conflicting information here.
CAO Pros.
Through you, Acting Mayor Ward, to Councillor Alwyn. Councillor Alwyn, I don't have the memo in front of me, so I apologize. I'm not aware that staff committed that it had been scheduled. I'd have to look at it. I'm happy to do that and follow up with you. Certainly there was verbal commitments that it was going to be taken, as I've previously indicated, but I don't have the memo in front of me, so I'd have to pull that up and get back to you.
Okay, another follow-up. So in response to some media requests, council was advised that the direction provided by council did not provide a deadline for the respondent to complete the training, and it also didn't include a requirement for the respondent to advise staff of the status of any of the actions. I guess maybe to Ms. Cook, is there an opportunity for council to provide that direction for a deadline to complete the training, and that the respondent advise staff of the status of those actions? Is there an opportunity for us to provide that clear direction?
Ms. Cook.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Ward, to Councillor Aylwin. It's up to council whether or not they would pass a motion to direct staff or request a member of council to do something.
Okay, so an item for discussion could be brought forward. Then that speaks to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Another one?
I do have another question about section B of the motion that we passed in public session. So it reads, going forward, the respondent be required to strictly comply with the city's staff council relations policy and only make contact with staff through the appropriate management. So to CAO Prowse, has this been happening? Is there ongoing monitoring of compliance with this direction from council?
CAO Prowse.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Acting Mayor Ward, to Councillor Alwyn. Certainly monitoring of that type of interaction with staff would be fairly challenging, Councillor Alwyn. We certainly have not had any complaints nor concerns raised that there has been non-compliance with that direction provided by council.
Councillor Alwyn?
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. And finally, Section C of that public motion says the respondent be requested to issue a written apology to the complainant, if requested, and to counsel for the respondent's conduct. I have not seen an apology come across my desk, but to CAO Prowse or the clerk, has an apology to counsel been submitted by the respondent?
CAO Prowse?
Through you, Acting Mayor Ward, to Councillor Elwyn, I will defer to the clerk on this. I believe she's provided correspondence to council previously.
Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. If the respondent had completed a written apology to council, we may not be aware of it because the motion did not state that staff be copied on the apology, so the respondent could have just sent it to council directly without staff's knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cook. Well, I have definitely not received an apology, so I guess that's the answer there on that piece. Okay, finally, sorry, just looking at my notes here. Actually, I think that's the last of my questions for now on this piece. That council could provide direction to have the training take place, because I do find it concerning that the training still hasn't taken place more than a year after we were told it was scheduled. So I'll leave it at that.
Any other inquiries? Councillor Thompson?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward. My inquiries to the clerk. I know that we received an email a couple weeks back in regards to opening up the chamber to the public. I was just wondering, in light of things that are going on, in the community and stuff, if there would be any, I understand numbers are going up and I know it's through EMT and all that. I was just wondering if we're considering opening chambers to the public sooner than later, as I think it's bad optics that we don't have public. This is a public house. This isn't the castle of council. So I understand people are nervous, but I just believe this is a place for the people. So I was just wondering if there's been any further discussion with the MT or the health units.
Ms. Cook?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Ward, to Councillor Thompson. Currently, staff are following guidelines from the health unit, which do want a more hybrid approach to be taken with our meetings for council for the time being, especially given the COVID numbers are rising again, as well as the staged approach. We wanted to bring staff back into the chamber first, so that was going to be for the first 3 meeting cycles. So it's staff, council, and then in May, we were going to start introducing the members of the public back into the chamber slowly. So it would be anybody providing a deputation to council or a presentation to council. And then in June, we would open up the chamber to the remaining members of the public. This is going to be reviewed 2 weeks prior to the beginning of May. So next week, I guess next 2 weeks, it'll be reviewed with EMT to see if we will go to the next phase. And again, it all falls back on the public health indicators, whether or not next phase or we stay as we are currently and wait to see what happens.
Thank you for that answer. And yeah, maybe just a comment. And I understand, and I appreciate everybody who has to come here to feel comfortable, but I just think we've got arenas opened, and I just would like to see it done sooner than later. And I understand the comfort of everybody. I want everybody to be able to come to work in a comfortable environment, but they're my comments. Thanks.
Okay, I don't see any other inquiries. We'll move on to announcements. Any announcements? Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Ward. I have two announcements. One is specific to the Recreation and Sport Community Grant Program. Just a reminder, I've had several conversations with different groups. This is the last week to be applying for that. It closes on Thursday. There is $300,000 tied to that grant that is on the table. So if you qualify, please do take the initiative to connect with Dan Bell or staff, but that is formally identified on our public website, and funding supports both program and events as well as capital. So again, please apply by April the 7th, and the money is awarded, I believe, May the 11th. Thank you to staff for facilitating that public process and application questions. My second announcement is, as it is the Year of the Garden through Communities in Bloom, please watch for some great opportunities to register for free to participate. A participant in that program is the Janice Laking Community Garden. For anyone that is looking to volunteer or participate, I'm aware that group has sent out a first garden event from 9 to 1 on Saturday, April the 9th. So this coming Saturday at 9 Churchill Drive in the south end of Barrie. Please email the Janice Laking Community Garden directly, or you can find information on the Barrie Urban Gardeners Facebook group. There also will be some collaborative events with Living Green, which is hosting an Earth Day event at the same site. Please go to Living Green Barrie's website and look at opportunities both to sign up, to volunteer for different initiatives, and to participate in some of the access to native plant species, rain barrels, and also to pick up a registration document for Communities in Bloom.
Seeing no other announcements, I have a few. One is that their April 2022 has been proclaimed as Parkinson's Awareness Month. April 2nd was World Autism Awareness Day, and people may notice we're all wearing daffodils. That's because it's for the Canadian Cancer Society Cancer Awareness Month, Daffodil Month. Starting May 2022, the City of Barrie will make it easier for residents to access waterfront parking passes by making them available as a digital permit through the Hotspot app and website. Once launched, information and instructions on how to apply will be available at barrie.ca/waterfront parking, all one word, waterfront parking. For more information about parking in the city, visit barrie.ca parking. And just a reminder, there is no charge for the Hotspot app, and if you do not have access to the internet, you can come to City Hall and get your pass. But that's once the program is launched. The program has not been launched yet. I think you did the Recreation and Sport Grant one, community grant. Although almost all COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted, mask or face coverings are still required while riding Barrie Transit and while in the terminal until at least April 27th. Circulation list. Any comments on tonight's circulation list? Seeing none, meeting's adjourned. The next City Council meeting will be held on Monday, April 11th at 7 p.m. General Committee is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.